I analyzed data from over 2,391 YouTube videos to figure out exactly what will help you to get more views. Because over the last 5 years of making videos both for myself and with other creators, I've heard all sorts of strategies to grow your audience. And I always had a hunch that most of the strategies did nothing. But now I have the proof once and for all of what you need to do to grow your channel on YouTube. All right, before we get into the data, I wanted to tell you a bit about why I did this, how I did this, and what you should know. So over the years of working in the YouTube space, I've heard that you should focus on a bunch of different factors. You know, there's retention. Mr. Beast loves to talk about that. There's click-through rate, which a lot of creators talk about. Sometimes creators will ask for likes and subscribers, and sometimes people will tell you that video length is what actually matters to get you views. So what I did is I pulled 2,391 videos from various educational creators to gain a better understanding across niches of what actually does help creators to grow. So what I did is I plotted all of those factors: retention, click-through rate, likes, subscribers, and even video length to see which one correlated directly with an increase in viewership. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 6 slides with you, 6 things that I've noticed or learned through this data exploration that I think are going to be valuable. You can think of this sort of like a TED Talk, so to speak, on how to get more views on YouTube. So I guess without further ado, we should dive into the data. So the first one that I looked at was retention, because this is the one that I think a lot of people talk about, that you need to get really high retention levels for your video to get recommended by the YouTube algorithm. Typically, you'll hear creators talking about getting anywhere over 40 to 70% retention. Specifically, Mr. Beast loves to talk about that. But obviously, he's playing a very different game from most of us, so I wanted to see if there was any sort of trend. Now, looking at the data, I grouped by percentages from 0 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, so on. My goal with that was to see what retention range had the highest level of average viewership. And looking at it pretty clearly right away, 30 to 40% retention is the sweet spot. It had almost double some of the other categories for average viewership. Now, what's interesting is that the other next highest one is 0 to 20%, which doesn't theoretically make sense. But I think what's interesting about this is that ultimately video length varies a lot, right? And so if I put out a 1-hour guide or a 1-hour video, my retention might be 20%, right? But that 20% is going to be significantly higher than the amount of minutes spent watching a video that's like, let's say 10 minutes long with a 50% watch time. That relative duration is longer. So I think beyond average retention, what matters a little bit more is your retention charts, your retention graph, how you engage viewers, your average time viewed instead of the percentage behind it. Ultimately, it's really tough for me to say, you need to hit 30 to 40% retention, because if you have a 3-hour long video come out, there's no chance you're ever going to get to 40%. No one's going to watch the full 3 hours, right? It's really, really hard. So I think bear in mind that your goal is to keep viewers engaged. That is an important part of YouTube, but ultimately setting some arbitrary percentage doesn't really matter. I think what's probably better is that if you have high performing content or even recent content that's in a certain range, try to see if you can increase that marginally with each upload. If you have 15% retention, can you get to 16, 17 with your next video? That's a much safer bet on engaging the audience for longer periods of time. That said, there was one thing that I wanted to show you guys. So pulling up this video here as an example, if I go into the engagement tab, this is typically if you scroll down where you'll see all of this retention info. Instead of looking at the average view duration or the average percentage viewed, which on this video is actually really strong, I like to scroll down to this section here instead. Specifically this piece of data, the amount of people who are still watching after 30 seconds. Now, if this isn't showing, you can just hover, get as close to 30 seconds as you possibly can and see how many people are still watching. To me, this is a better measurement of how well your packaging delivered, how well you delivered on the click and basically set the expectations for that video. With any video, if you see this chart, you're going to lose the majority of your viewership in the first minute to minute and a half. So if you can optimize that section, you're going to have a much better time getting them to the end of the video. Take, for example, this video. In the first 47 seconds, I lost a quarter of the audience, 25%. And then over the next 20 minutes, I lost 50%. Sure, I lost more people throughout the rest of the video, but ultimately there's natural drop off, right? And so if I could get that extra 25% of people to stick around, more people would ultimately make it to the end of the video as well, right? So the idea is that you focus more time and attention to the hook where you're losing a lot of people anyways. Ultimately, on a video like this, I think the hook's pretty effective. You really can't, get that many more people to stay engaged. So I wouldn't take too much issue with a hook like this. But the other thing you can look at is your retention graph. Pulling up another video here, I can see that this section has actually pretty big drop off. And I really did lose the attention of a lot of people in this section of the video. And so the other thing I like to look at is just my graph as a whole. Is there any sections that have big drop off? What sections are flat that kept people engaged? What sections maybe have a slight increase? Is there like a comprehension issue or something about that section that got people engaged if they were thinking about clicking off? These are things I like to learn from that aren't as tangible as looking at this piece of data and saying it hit 40%, this video is a success, I have seen plenty of videos on my channel that have 50, 60% retention and don't go on to get hundreds of thousands of views. So there's no surefire way to say like, I have this high level of retention, so this video is going to go viral. You know what I mean? So I think what this shows me is that there's no direct correlation with retention and viewership, but obviously your goal is to keep viewers engaged. So always do keep trying to keep more people engaged throughout your videos and understanding what you can do to increase their interest, to keep them around for longer, and so on. Hey, real quick, I'm editing this video. Realized I completely forgot to mention that I actually have the entire presentation linked down below for you if you want to download it, take a look at all of the data that I found, all of the research that I did. More details down there. Feel free to check it out. Next, we have click-through rate. This one is very interesting. This one has some very impactful data, and it actually makes sense. So in case you didn't know, click-through rate is found in the reach tab of your video. You can see the click-through rate right here. Ultimately, this is the measure of the number of people who clicked your video based on the total number of people who got recommended your videos. So if they see the video on the homepage, the percentage of people who actually click on your video is your impression click-through rate. Now, looking at this graph, it's pretty clear that there is a trend here, that the higher you get, the more views you seem to get. Now, obviously there's a couple outliers here. Some videos are gonna perform better than others. And in this range here, 7 to 7.5%, there was a few outliers, which definitely helped to push up that average viewership. But as a whole, seeing, 7 to 10% click-through rate is almost a guaranteed surefire way to increase your viewership. And more tactically, that makes sense. If you can increase the percentage of people who are clicking, by nature, you get more views. So like, for example, if I have a video that has 100,000 views and only 3% click-through rate, I can double my viewership by getting a 6% click-through rate, and so on and so forth by increasing from there. Typically, you're not going to see much over 10%. If you are, it's usually more within your niche. And you have like this really high click-through rate, it's probably not going to get as high viewership. But as you can see in this range, where I'd recommend is anywhere from 5 to 8 or 9%. Specifically, when a video first comes out with your core audience, you really do want to hit that 7 to 10% range if you can, because over time, as your video gets recommended to a larger audience of people, fewer people are going to click your videos, and by nature, your click-through rate will come down. To show you an example, this video here started off pretty strong, 7%, but as it started to get more recommendations, you can see it did start to drop here, even hitting like 2.9% on one of the days. Just by nature of getting more impressions, you're going to see people clicking less often because the more impressions you get, the less people who are going to get recommended your video that are the perfect target audience for your content. Despite that though, still sitting at a 5.7% with over 1 million impressions is a pretty good place to be. Now, if I sort by views, right, and I click on my most popular video here and go to the click-through rate, you can see that this principle here that we were looking at with the data actually does align quite well, if it'll ever load. 7.3%, this video has 17 million impressions, but if you see, like, it started off very high, right? We're looking at 14, 13%. So over time, the click-through rate will come down. This is where it got the most impressions, as you can see right here, this big jump, and it has the lowest click-through rate. So the more impressions you get, the lower it'll go. And so if you can start off higher with your click-through rate, it's a sign that your core audience is engaged, and over time it'll come down. But yes, 7% is that ideal range. Ideally, you want to be over 5%. Anything under that, I would start to think about how your titles can be clearer, simpler, maybe portray a problem a little bit more simply, and maybe making your thumbnails a little bit more punchy. Ideally, having 2 to 3 core elements of your thumbnail is going to be what gets the most attention to your video. So I think like the principles with packaging is that the simpler you go, the higher the percentage, the easier it is for people to understand the concept. So simplify for larger impact. All right, up next, we have subscribers. So on this one, there is really no correlation here. You can see that the average line here is pretty clearly flat, actually, pretty insane. The way I measured this though is that I took the number of subscribers and divided it by the thousands of views, sort of like how RPM is calculated, for example, to get a subs per 1,000 views metric. And what you can see here is that the ideal range to be is anywhere from 10 to 19 subscribers. Now, in more niche audiences, such as this channel here, typically I do see my own subs getting closer to 25, even 30 subs per 1,000 views. Ultimately, if you can get anything over 10, that's a good place to be. But I think that this is less a measure of correlation to viewership and more just a measure of your video is able to get people engaged enough to click subscribe and ask for more. It's probably a really strong video or a strong idea. So I think that this is really about making your content better to make people really want more over making your videos more subscribable to get more views. The correlation's not there. I think subscribing is a direct outcome of making a good video and not a direct cause to get more views. That's the takeaway here. And the trend is actually even less convincing for likes. So if you ever ask someone to like your videos, at least ask them to subscribe instead, because it shows that liking the video has actually no correlation. The more likes you get, the less performance. Anywhere from 10 to 30 likes per 1,000 views is good, but I wouldn't worry about it. Just use that as a metric to see how your audience is engaging with the content. If you have a lot of dislikes, then understand why, but don't put too much stock in likes. Engagements aren't what causes viewership, but they are a good measure of how your audience feels. So use it as like a third property to look at. Look at your video stats, look at your general channel stats like subs and stuff like that, but then look at engagements later. It's not very important. All right, and last but not least, we looked at how video length impacts performance as well. And honestly, there's not really a direct correlation here, but there does seem to be some evidence that going longer does help with performance and average viewership. Now, ideally, anything over that 8-minute range is going to do pretty well for your performance because it has the ability for YouTube to run mid-roll ads. What I will say is that we are seeing a big shift in YouTube right now where with short form content being as popular as it is on YouTube, viewers are gravitating towards longer long form videos. So if we look at a creator like Veritasium, for example, big fan of these videos. And if we go back in time, right, like a lot of these videos were quite a bit shorter, 15, 19, 23, 18. These videos aren't super long, right? But if we go to the recent ones here, we've got 58, 28, 20, 25, 35, 30, 54, 53, 30, 55, 17, 44, 24, 39, 45, 35. Like these are longer videos, right? Another one of my favorite creators here. This is a compilation video, but 3 hours, 43 minutes, 1 hour. These videos are all quite a bit longer now. And across YouTube, you can see a broader trend of creators posting longer videos. Do I think that directly causes your viewership to go up? No. But do I think there is a correlation there that if you can get the audience to engage on those long form videos and actually watch for 10, 15, even 20 minutes on these videos? I think it's more so about allowing your viewers to spend more time with you and engaging them in that time. Looking specifically at another channel, TBPN. These guys have completely broken YouTube. Let's be real. This is something brand new to YouTube, posting 3-hour-long live streams every single day for a very niche, in-depth community. This is, again, something that we haven't really seen before, but it's been really successful with their core audience because of the time spent, right? They have so much available time that it brings people back, creates appointment viewing. And so I don't think that your video length is ultimately what matters for performance, but again, if you can engage your viewers for longer, it will help with your recommendations. So ultimately, here's my takeaway. There's no shortcut, right? There's 20 million videos being posted to YouTube every single day. And so your primary goal should be to get people clicking and watching. We did see a correlation between click-through rate and viewership, and there's an obvious reason behind that. If you can get more people to click, you're going to get more views, right? And so in an era of content saturation, think about what ideas stand out. Think about what will get your audiences engaged and focus on getting that click and keeping that click engaged. That's how you build depth audiences. That's how you build a community that supports every piece of content you put out. Think less about what's going to increase your viewership and trying to find a secret hack, and think more about how you can be different, how you can stand out, how you can be the fresh perspective on YouTube that people haven't seen before. That is how you dominate and win on YouTube. Now, quickly, with that said, I wanted to let you guys know that I'm actually opening up spots in my one-on-one coaching. There's a link down below in the description if you're interested. Won't talk too much about it, but feel free to check it out if that's something you're looking for. With that said, be sure to subscribe if you liked this video, and check out this video next where I tell you about the 5 best ways to make money on YouTube this year. See you over there.